come to me. Come to me.
Let's just get right into it, fellas. We have all now seen Nosferatu, and this is probably, I would say, around the table, this is one of our most anticipated of the year. I think the person here has probably been anticipating it the most was, of course, myself. There's nobody else here. I'd honestly probably rank it myself, Jake, then Daniel. Evan was just kind of like, take it or leave it. Am I about right with that one?
Which
buddy?
one are we talking about?
Oh, the new one, the one that just came out, Nosferatu.
More like Nosferatu, am I right?
Nosferatu, gotcha.
That's the one with Demi Moore, right?
Yes, that's the one. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. But who am I kidding? Evan, you've been talking about this. I give you shit all the time for it, but I do love it. This is the guy who did a 10-minute video on a still image when it dropped. So to say he was excited was, that'd be an understatement. But let's go around a little bit here. We'll kind of just go below. We'll just do this. Jake, where was your excitement level for Nosferatu going into it? I know you and I got to see it at a press screening about 3 weeks ago, so it's been a little while for us.
Yeah, I didn't get to do a refresher, even though I do want to see it in the theaters maybe at least one more time. I was really excited going into this one. Eggers has just grown on me and grown on me and grown on me as I watch more of his movies. Like, I think when I saw The Witch for the first time, it is a little tough to get into with the dialect, but I've learned to respect it over the years, I think, and now I really enjoy it. The Lighthouse I liked even more, and then when I saw The Northman, I'm like, okay, this guy is, this guy's pumping out banger after banger. And going into this one, I just thought there's no better writer-director to tackle this project than Robert Eggers right now. He just loves like old school style horror. I knew that this was going to be something special. Definitely a top 10 most anticipated from 2024. And I really think it delivered. I'm really excited to get into this one. But I love Robert Eggers, man, and this is just another excellent film from him. So I can't wait to see what he does next. The Night or whatever sounds really cool. So
there's a few
couple
titles that have
been
floating around that we've been seeing rumors for. Daniel, where was your anticipation level for Nosferatu, my friend?
10 out of 10, man. I was super excited. Perhaps maybe for different reasons than Evan, because I love Robert Eggers. I wouldn't say I'm quite as obsessed with Robert Eggers as Evan is, but The Witch is one of my favorite, like, probably modern movies, period. Just absolutely love it. And this was actually supposed to be his second movie. So he's been talking about doing it for a very long time, and it just kept hitting delays, cast members dropping out. And I kind of accepted that it wasn't going to happen, to be honest. But when it finally came together, I was so excited because Dracula is my favorite fictional character of all time. The Dracula story, for me, is the greatest story ever told. It's my favorite story of all time. I could watch hundreds of adaptations of Dracula, and I would be just happy the whole time. And if anybody doesn't know, Nosferatu is Dracula. The original was an unauthorized adaptation. And I just love this story. I love gothic horror, and Robert Eggers seemed like the perfect guy to take it. So I was super excited.
Cool. There we go. And Evan, I'll let you go. The chains are off, my friend. Your anticipation level, we all know, was there. So why don't we have you actually start off with your first impressions after seeing it? You've seen it now how many times?
3 times.
Okay.
I just got back from my third showing like 20 minutes ago. So I'm super fresh on it. But I should preface a little bit because like this is something for me where it's like this has been a movie that I have been following for 9 years now. Because I remember when The Witch came out, there was a panel that Robert Eggers did in Salem where he had mentioned that he wanted to do Nosferatu. And immediately after seeing The Witch, I was like, that would be perfect. He's got such like an eye for the style that would fit this. So I've literally been following every single morsel of information I can get about this movie for almost a decade now. And like Daniel, there were points where I was like, I don't know if this is ever going to happen. It just kept falling through. They kept running into like casting issues and production woes and funding. And it was a mess. And then I was so glad when it finally happened. I think you said you wanted my first impressions.
Yep, you can kick us off with first impressions.
Yeah, so my first impression was, oddly enough, disappointment. Because over those 10 years, I had built up a very, very different image in my head of what a Robert Eggers Nosferatu movie would look like. I thought it would be closer to what Werner Herzog did, with the very quiet, slow, melancholic thing, and this is not that. So when I first saw this, that's kind of how I felt. And then I went back the next day because I was like, I need to watch this like knowing what it is. And then I was like, okay, now I'm getting this. And I really liked it. Coming out of the theater this third time, it finished about an hour ago now. This may be my favorite vampire movie. I was absolutely head over heels with this thing coming out of it. Eggers is my favorite director working today. I have loved everything he's done. The Lighthouse is probably still my favorite. I mean, that's a strong contender for my favorite movie of all time. I adore The Lighthouse deeply. But currently, pardon me, sitting here thinking about Nosferatu after seeing it 3 times, I am head over heels in love with this operatic horror movie.
Nice. And Jake, you and I had very similar thoughts coming out of this one when we first saw it, so I'll let you take it away. Your first impression, sir?
Yeah, I was a little shocked by certain elements to this one at first. I think going into this, knowing about all those issues, leading into this one, Robert Eggers was even saying he didn't want this to be a second movie because he just felt like that would be like grossly like narcissistic, I think is what he said. He was like, that would just be crazy for me to do that as my second film. And I was like, okay, he's waiting to do this one. He wants to be a better director, so he's got to bring something really professional and something maybe even a little more sophisticated than what he's done in the past. And you definitely see that here. I have seen reviews saying that I don't know if I agree with 100%, but I am hearing people say that like his attention to detail, his want for that accuracy to portray, Nosferatu as Vlad the Impaler almost does work against itself. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that or disagree with it, but I will say the first time I saw the mustache, it was a little goofy. It's so shocking because I think you have an image of what a certain character looks like in your brain, and to get something so different, this isn't like a slight change. This is a complete departure from what we've known of the character. It is a little shocking at first, but I got used to it. The only scene that I think doesn't work for me in this whole movie, though, is when he gets out of the coffin and you just see his wiener. It's just a little. It's a little like, okay, this is, you threw a mustache at me, you threw a wiener in my face. I don't even know what to think about all this. But no, overall, man, this is a terrifying and like Evan said, not the slow burn that I thought it was going to be. I might even go so far as to say this one of the faster paced Eggers films, which is really not at all what I was expecting. Caught me off guard, but in a good way. I really liked this rendition of the story. It's it's a way more sexual take on it too, which I again I like. Those are themes that go all the way back to the original that are done really well here. And I don't know, man. The performances across the board are easily the strongest thing, surprisingly, from Lily Rose Depp. Did not expect that. When you have a cast like, Willem Dafoe, Ralph Ineson, Nicholas Hoult, God, there's so many, Emma Corrin is in this too. So many great performers in this movie. Aaron Taylor Johnson too. Can't go without saying.
I was going to say, don't forget about Craven the Hunter. Okay?
Oh yeah.
That's the boy right there.
That's his best movie of the year, though. Mm-hmm. Come on, let's be real.
Oh yeah.
But I loved it, Dylan. I loved it. It was so good.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. I know we both kind of memed on the mustache a little bit. Said I wasn't expecting to see Mario or Wario pop up in this movie. I was expecting a little bit more of what I got from the original, but it has grown on me. I think especially I know when I was talking to Evan earlier this week, the final shot when you really see the full beast of what Nosferatu is, it all comes together really well. And again, it's like, if I do agree that I think that's going to be a bit of an element that could throw some people off, as just the mustache in general, which I don't think is a movie killer.
No.
But for people who aren't expecting the more faithful Vlad the Impaler interpretation, it can definitely be a bit of a thing. And also, yes, the Nosferatu wiener, that was also a bit of a surprise. And you also said sent me some photos of Nosferatu's wiener and Nicholas Hoult, who got to take that thing home with him. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Good for Robert Eggers. Good guy.
Dylan, I just really wanted you to see that before this stream.
There we go.
Really
Daniel,
important to me.
What were your initial thoughts and impressions on Nosferatu, sir?
I had a wonderful time watching this on the night of Christmas. And when I went to see it, I was very excited, but I felt at peace. And I was just like, let's see what this is. But I had a feeling, and I've always felt this way leading up to this movie, that Robert Eggers is the perfect director to deliver exactly the kind of vampire movie I want, like ripped out of my brain. And, you know, for a lot of people, a lot of people like more fast-paced action kind of vampires like Blade or Daybreakers or something. And I'm just not that kind of guy. I like the much more historical, slower, dread-inducing vampire movies. And I felt like Robert Eggers was the perfect guy, also partially because he's so obsessed with history. And I am very fascinated by the history of vampires, the history of beliefs around vampires, of course. And when I saw this scene that really told me I am getting exactly what I want was when Nicholas Hoult first shows up to the Transylvanian village, and there is this very traditional folk dancing and music. Everybody feels extremely authentic. And you see a practice where they dig up a corpse and stake it. And that is a practice I've read about, that people, when things would go wrong in a village, they might suspect, well, there's probably a vampire. This person recently died. We should dig them up and stake them in case they are the cause of this. In fact, even sometimes when they dig up bodies, there would be blood around the corpse's mouth, because that's actually a natural thing that can happen as a body decomposes, is blood will secrete. And that would be confirmation. Yes, this is a vampire. So they stake it, and they even stake it with a metal stake, which is done not necessarily to kill the vampire, but to hold it down so it can't get back up. And from then I just thought, this is for me. This is what I want. Like, I want this kind of movie. Yeah. And the whole movie really played like that for me. It also was more fast and just much more a traditional horror movie than maybe I expected, and more than I think Robert Eggers has ever done before. Like, it feels like this is the most, like, I am giving you a horror movie with scares, with dread, like, so much. And it's not even like his scariest movie, because I think The Witch is his scariest movie, but it felt the most like horror based, which also surprises me why my review of this movie, the comments are overrun by people calling it boring, which I just can't imagine. Like, I just cannot imagine being bored by this, but whatever. So I had a wonderful time. It was exactly what I wanted. The look was unexpected. I'm sure we'll get into that more, but it was what I wanted, and I was super happy.
Absolutely. And then
did you
go ahead.
Sorry, Daniel, just on what you were talking about with that ritual they committed, I thought you'd be interested to know this as well. Did you look into the significance of the white horse and the virgin that they had?
No,
I was very curious about what that was. So apparently it was part of the old folklore, was that if you wanted to find where a vampire was buried, you would put a virgin on a white horse, because that was kind of like the peak of purity, and the horse would refuse to step on the grave of a vampire. So you'll notice when they get up to the grave, it stops right before and it starts freaking out, and that's when they're like, "This is the grave." So there's some cool folklore there too.
Oh, nice.
I think I finally understand Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 now.
Yeah.
Finally. Took you long enough.
I mean, so much of the movie is about like purity and on both sides of the spectrum. So I thought that was cool that he included that.
And I feel like you're just going to get that the more that you rewatch this movie. Like, that's something I can't wait for, is when this finally does drop on 4K and everything.
Director's
to buy
commentary.
It. And yeah, just that is, I really love Eggers' commentaries. I think he's one of the best to do it still, because like he really just gets into the history and the minutia of everything that he does and researches. And I'm excited to kind of hear a little bit more about the stuff that I'm totally, for sure, 100% missing, because again, I've only seen it one time, so I know there's going to be more that I'll probably pick up on each subsequent rewatch. But with that said, Evan, before we start talking about some of our critiques, why don't we talk about some spoiler parts that you would say are some of your favorite moments? You know, if we can talk all no holds bar, but get into spoilers, some of your favorite moments, and just rein it in just a little bit for me, okay? I know it's going to be tough. That's why I'm starting with you.
Yeah, okay. Interestingly enough, one of my favorite moments of the movie at this point is something that I thought was so goofy the first time around, but now I love it. And it's the scene when Orlok goes to confront Ellen on the night where he kind of gives his proposal. And part of it was that I wasn't expecting Orlok to be so front and center in the movie, and you're getting these like close-ups of him yelling. I'm like, this is so different from what I thought it was going to be. But that scene, there's this grand sense of like dominance and coveting that I really, really liked, because a lot of vampire stories that we get over the last many decades have been either like the action-packed stuff you were talking about, or sort of like romantic, where there's like a humanity to the vampire and there's a sort of sympathetic side to it. That is not here. You know, they are talking about like sort of a marriage and he's her bride, but there is no romance or love here at all. He even says that I can't love, or she says it to him and he's like, yes, that's correct. But in the same way, I cannot live without you. Like he can't love her, but it's just this pure obsession and you are mine because you called out to me all these years ago. I love the feeling of that scene so much and the way that it's, no, I'm thinking of a different moment when he puts Harding to sleep or forces him to not wake up when he's killing his kids, which was fucked. Yeah, that whole interaction between Orlok and Ellen, I loved. That scene when Anna goes in and opens the door and sees Orlok rip her daughter's throat out and just throw her to the ground like she's a rotten piece of meat and just slowly turn to her as the curtains are gusting behind him and the blue sky. Oh my god, it's incredible. It's like a gothic fairy tale. But that, and I also was really struck by the conversation that Ellen and Anna have on the beach, where Ellen kind of gets lost in that other world that she's in touch with for a moment. It just starts waxing poetically, and Anna is standing there like, why? Like she's speaking like she's talking out of a storybook. Like what is she's so thrown off by the things that she's saying. She just looks at the sky. She's like, destiny. And then she comes back down and she's like kind of regaining her humanity there for a moment. But I'm going to try and limit myself here because I'm just going to go on forever. But those are the moments that are coming to mind right now. I am still sick, by the way, so sorry about my voice.
Oh, you're good. You're good. And definitely agree with you on the scene where Nosferatu eats their kids. That was honestly, I did not expect that. You know, coming out of Terrifier 3 and everything, just a couple months before, I thought I'd be a little bit more prepared. But seeing that, it was just like, oh my god, like wow, they're really going for it. I can't wait to see the discourse on this one and get called.
Kids are not safe in 2024 horror movies.
They are really not.
You know what? I guarantee there won't be any discourse about this one. People aren't going to care because it's not Terrifier.
Yeah. Jake, favorite moments. What are they?
Oh, favorite moments. I mean, Cockferaftu for sure, number one. No, but for real though, no. I think one of the scariest moments for me, which I think was something, you know, that's not even the right word. I wasn't looking for scary moments from this movie. I was looking for the more creeping dread stuff. But again, I like that this movie kind of went in a different direction. It was still very effective for what it was. And to me, one of the moments that had me on the edge of my seat the most was everything with the Demeter on the ship. I just loved that. I loved that so much. I even said, I think Dylan, I even told you walking out of the theater, I'm like, that one scene did so much more for that sequence in the original story than all of the last voyage of Demeter.
That's true.
I mean, I would have gone to the theater and seen that, like all the maybe like what 10 minutes of footage that we see on the ship. I would have gone to see that opposed to the entire movie we got, I think last year. Dude, I don't know. That was terrifying to me, seeing his back just for like a moment, and then he jumps out and gets the guy. I mean, it's not even the way I'm talking about it. If you haven't seen the movie, it sounds like a jump scare, but it's so much more than that. I think it's way more well paced than something you'll get out of like a Conjuring flick. I don't know. To me, that lives rent-free in my head. Easily a top 5 scariest moment from a 2024 horror film. So I loved that.
I believe the ship is called the Impusa in this version.
Oh, really? It's not. It's not.
Yeah, because Demeter was from Dracula, but all the names of stuff are different in this version.
It's all just blending in my head.
Yeah.
Dude, I had to cut out a sequence of my review where I was calling Nicholas Holt Renfield, and I'm like, that's not right. That's
Not right.
that's incorrect.
Love it. Love it. Daniel, you got a favorite moment from the film? If you can pick
Yeah, I do want to briefly piggyback off of Evan and the conversation between the two of them in the bedroom, because one thing that shocked me about that scene is like their heavy breathing during all of it, to where like it's a conversation scene, but it felt like a sex scene. And I was not expecting that kind of energy between the two of them, especially because of just how grotesque Orlok is. And I was just like, oh, this is weird. I like it. It's awesome. Yeah, one of my favorite moments I already mentioned with the digging up the body. But I got to say, I think my favorite stuff in the movie is Hutter first showing up at the castle. And it is so dread-inducing. And just, I was so excited at the thought of like finally getting to see Orlok. Hearing his voice was amazing. And when I first heard his voice, I was like, okay, is Bill Skarsgård actually in this movie? Because like
Yeah,
I
right,
almost
dude?
didn't believe it. I was almost like, is this a publicity stunt? Did they use an unknown to drum up rumors that they used a real vampire or something? And I even did research into it. I was looking at Bill Skarsgård interviews, and like he trained with an opera singer.
Yeah.
He did hundreds of recordings of himself to get this voice right. I can't believe it. I cannot believe he pulled that off. The voice is amazing. The accent. And I really fell in love with the look because it felt so much like Dracula from the book. And it kind of felt like if you read Bram Stoker's Dracula when it first came out and you had no influence of any movies, that you're trying to imagine this grotesque, undead, hundreds of years old count in the Carpathian Mountains. This is probably about what you would imagine. And I don't know why I didn't expect that. I don't know why I expected a typical Orlok design, and I didn't expect Eggers to go more historically based. But he did, and I ended up really falling in love with it. And I just love Nicholas Holt's performance so much in those scenes because he feels terrified like no actor I've seen in a long time. Like he starts crying at one point, like his eyes are tearing up just because he has to talk to this thing, and it's so terrifying. You know, it's such a stark contrast from Keanu in 1992 Dracula, who's so super nonchalant, like eating his food. This seems fine. I'm not worried about it. And Nicholas Hoult is like wetting his pants over standing in front of this creature. He's so good. He's like unsung hero of this movie for me. And I just love all those scenes so much. And Orlok hidden in the shadows. And oh, it's so creepy. It's so cool.
Yeah, I think Nicholas Hoult and Lily Rose Depp were certainly, I mean, they for having the performance we get from Bill Skarsgård and then having those two still come out as like really, really impressive, lead characters. It was quite a feat, I gotta say, and they definitely deserve it, especially Lily Rose Depp, because like I did not see what was that show called, the one with the from the Euphoria,
The Idol.
director, The Idol, yeah, and I know that she had gotten basically ravaged amongst everybody in that show did, and people were so upset that Anya Taylor-Joy didn't sign on for this one like she was originally supposed to, and then they were like, oh, why are we replacing it with her? But like I could tell you, walking out of that theater, I was just like, God damn, like she's
incredible.
Really brought something to this. Like this smile, the substance. I mean, like this was seriously 2024 was to the ladies, man. Like as far as actresses go, like Jesus Christ, they really all brought it. And I can't think of any other performances that could top this from just like the male side of things this year, because every female performance I've seen in those movies, it's just like on a completely different scale.
And Micah Monroe and Longlegs, I threw in
Oh
there
yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've been considering doing a video talking about this because like I just think there's been so many great female performances this year, and Lily Rose Depp was certainly another big surprise. It was just one that, again, I thought she'd be fine, but I did not expect her to be like this transformative. Like, geez, like that was something else. As far as like just in like scenes that I really liked, I mean, I'm right there with all of you guys on pretty much all those scenes I enjoyed. I think for me, the movie really picks up as soon as we get to that village, the little gypsy village outside of the castle. I think that's really impactful. It really finally got me sinking in. I wasn't as in love with the castle stuff. I think it was twofold. With like, I loved certain elements of it, like the voice, the whole setting, everything was good, but it strays very close to the material we all know. And you know, if you've been prepping for this and you've been getting excited, like I feel like most of us have, it's it's kind of rehashing some story beats, which you kind of have to. I understand. But once we get past that, and then once, Nosferatu's on the ship and he's heading over to the city and everything, it's like that was really, again, where I felt like the movie found its stride for me. And then we get Willem Dafoe, who I absolutely adored him. And yeah, I think overall that's probably where I sit with it. I think like that's the only section of the movie that I could say kind of disappointed me as a whole. Evan, were there any other elements that kind of left you a bit disappointed even after 3 viewings?
I mean, a couple things. Yeah, I don't think the movie needed the jump scares. Like they're there and they function and they're not terrible by any means, but I just don't feel like they really added much. Like I know that Eggers had talked about how he thought of moments from the original movie as being kind of early iterations of jump scares, like when Orlok is first revealed in the coffin. I never really considered it to be that, and I feel like if they had let that moment be a little more looming instead of like a big explosion, I might have enjoyed that a little more. And then this is something that bothers me with pretty much every version of the story. Maybe it's just a complaint that I have with the Dracula story in general. Canuck, he feels a little too like I feel like the Renfield archetype is always just a little too far into a caricature for me. And I was hoping that Eggers would dial that back a little bit, but no, he kind of went with the complete madman, cackling, raving, which, that's the character, and it's an honest representation of the character, and it's accurate and it's authentic. But maybe it's just an archetype that I don't resonate with a ton, so I was hoping that would get dialed back a bit. But aside from that, I at this point, I don't really have anything. The stuff at the castle, I absolutely adored. That was just like, I felt like I was in this disorienting dreamscape the whole time. And I think that's what made that work for me, was that like narratively, it's all very familiar, but there is this just like delirious quality to the way that Eggers did it that made it feel fresh for me. And part of it is, lighting all of it with candlelight. It looks stunning. All the shots of like the paperwork on the table. Good God Almighty!
My only complaints, just to clarify with that, were pretty much narratively. From just a composition, the way it was put together, the way it looks, it's glorious. Like, I'm not taking away from any of that. The voice was maybe, if I had to narrow down a favorite aspect, it's probably the voice. I think that just I love how he just like kind of rolled all of his words and everything. Like it's stuck in my brain.
And well rest yourself.
I don't know. You can probably correct me, but what's the verbiage where he's like, "How do you say we are neighbors?" Like I just thought like that was such
something
a weird,
like that.
Yeah, he's like, as you say in your country, we are now neighbors.
How terrifying would that be for
Like,
Hutter?
It feels like he's damned his entire country by signing that document.
He's just
Also, he
sitting
should
there the
never
whole
have
time,
signed
like,
that. That was in a language he can't read.
Yeah.
Like, I gotta call my legal counsel at my company real quick.
Yeah, he's not doing his job too well. He was really just trying to get home. But Jake, would you say is probably your biggest, I guess, negative on the film going in out of it? Like if we had to have something or just something to kind of say, hey, this wasn't perfect. If there isn't anything, then obviously say that. But I'm curious.
I mean, dude, like it's not a negative. I don't want to say this is a negative about the film, but I want to rewatch this movie so bad again because I could not stop looking at that effing mustache the first time we got to the castle, and it's just so not what I was expecting. Daniel, I think you said earlier that you were more expecting like typical Count Orlok with the bald head and the pointy ears and all that, and that's I think that's where I was going too, but it makes way more sense for Eggers to do what he did here, right? It does make sense to me, and as the movie went along, I'm like, okay, I can get into this. Like I get it. I understand why this choice was made, but initially it's just such a shock, and especially if you don't know like why that choice was made, I could see some people just walking out of the theater being like, what was that? But it makes total sense coming from Robert Eggers specifically, and I want to watch this movie again so I can hone in a little more on like what's actually going on there, if that makes sense, opposed to just being like, there's a big fluffy mustache on Count Orlok's face. It's really well done though, even like what you were saying. I think some of the most iconic moments, and hell, maybe even some of the creepiest moments happen right there because we keep Orlok in the shadows, because of the way it's framed. Evan, you were talking about how everything is like natural light in a lot of Eggers movies. Oh, love it. So good. I think, the witch is always going to be the most impressive, I think, just because of how attentive they were. But this movie is just, it's so pretty. I love it. I think one of the most gorgeous horror movies of 2024.
Yeah. Fun thing with the mustache, I actually knew that was going to be there going in, because this is how obsessive I have been about this. In the second trailer that they released for the movie, they show that silhouetted image of Orlok behind the curtain at the start of the movie, and you can see an outline of a mustache there.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, so when I saw the second trailer, I was like, he's got a mustache there, and that makes sense because it's Vlad the Impaler, and he's like a dead Transylvanian nobleman, and as Eggers said, good luck finding a Transylvanian nobleman without a mustache. Yeah. So I had mentally prepared myself going in that there was going to be a big bushy mustache on old Orlok.
Well, damn, you should have said something to the rest of us, man, because then maybe we would have liked the movie a lot more, because that just fucking killed it for me. No.
There is a devil in this world, and I have met him.
But you could never please me as he could.
Daniel, did you have any points that you would say left you a little bit underwhelmed? I guess not negative. I won't go with that because I feel like we're all pretty positive.
No, underwhelmed. You know, I didn't have the problem that it seems like a lot of people are having with it being very well-worn territory because it's just my favorite story. I didn't expect it to be something that different. And I think a lot of people did because I've heard so much spoiler phobicness about Nosferatu and like, no spoilers, don't tell me anything. And whenever I heard that, I'd always think, well, it's Dracula.
It's a little hard to spoil.
Not like you probably know what this is. And I think there are a lot of people who don't know that Nosferatu is Dracula. And they were kind of surprised. They're like, oh, I know this story. I had no disappointments. Nothing underwhelmed me. The only thing where I felt slight problem with pacing, where I was like, okay, let's move on, is just like maybe the fifth time Aaron Taylor Johnson goes on a speech about how there are no vampires. Like he kind of does it over and over again. He's always like, what are you talking about? This is medieval nonsense. This is the modern world. There's no such thing. And he does it over and over. And at a certain point, I was like, okay, everyone in this movie knows there are vampires. Everyone in the audience knows there are vampires. Can we get Aaron Taylor Johnson on board so we can move on? Like that's kind of it. And eventually he does. He gets on board, and we move on
for 5 minutes.
Then for a little bit.
Then he dies.
And then he fucks a dead body and dies.
Oh man! When I saw that, I was like, "This is the most macabre movie that has come out in years."
Oh
I
yeah!
cannot believe it. It's so great. But that's it. Like I just. You know, it was unexpected, the level of sexuality between Orlok and basically Mina. I can't remember her name off the top of my head. Ellen. Unexpected. But I was like excited by it when they're like heavy breathing when they're talking. I'm like, whoa, this is crazy. I'm into it. So all the unexpected stuff was exciting to me.
The scene between Ellen and Thomas when they're like just yelling at each other and then they start banging, that was wild. Like I was sitting there in the movie just like, Jesus Christ, like this.
I love
really
that because that was like Thomas being like, fucking watch me, bitch.
Like
knowing that Orlok is like looking in and seeing all this and he's like, fuck you,
literally.
That to me is when I was like, okay, Lily Rose Depp is the best part of this movie.
Seriously, like
she's
her
so good.
Performance, like she just
when
hits
she's
so many different levels in
when
that
she's
scene.
like walking around the room and she's first talking about how like he sold her or whatever, and her body's like doing this while he's looking. I'm like, oh my fucking god,
Linda Blair.
It's terrifying.
I have only heard so many like negative things about her Idol show, and I was so worried because I think Dylan, you said earlier about Anya Taylor-Joy supposed to playing that role, and I'm like, man, we're missing out here, and I was like, nope, I'm wrong. She's ass,
amazing.
Man. Wow, yeah, really impressive performance.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I feel like Eggers is such a good director and writer, and just the stories he's brought together. Whenever he adds like a new like piece to that puzzle, like when he adds a new actor that we're excited to see, everybody always wants them to come back. Like everybody wants Ralph Ineson and Anya Taylor-Joy and Pattinson and Defoe. I saw a clip, I don't know if you guys saw this, for an interview that they were doing where they were like, are you planning to work with Eggers again and stuff like that? And he just looks over at him laughing. Defoe's laughing at Eggers and he's like, well, I offered him 2 roles this week. So, I think that's a match made in heaven and they're going to be together forever. So that's lastly, just because I will forget about this, and I did want to mention it. I thought about it earlier, but oh no, Jake's gone. But I was just looking through IMDb images just to get refreshed with the film. Because like I said, it's been a few weeks. I was the only other piece to Nosferatu that I was a little put off by, but I got over it because it's such a minor nitpick. I loved the shot in the trailer where they showed his white dead eyes. And I feel like him having the human eyes, like for most of it, was just very like, I get it. I would have loved, I think it would have been even creepier, and the mustache might not have taken it away had they taken away some more of the, humanness to him by giving him those white eyes permanently. I thought that would have been a really nice touch, but I digress. I still don't want to sound like I hated everything about him. Like I loved him by the end. Like I think that the design is beautiful, but it was just kind of when you've been building up and, you've kind of been hiding your monster the whole time and you're just sitting there and you're like, okay, we're about to see it. Let's go. What's it going to look like? And you're just so not what you're expecting, I guess, you know, you can nitpick a little bit.
You thought he was a little too H2O Michael Myers, right?
A little too H2O Michael Myers. Yeah, I would say a little. I don't need to see the eyes. I need the devil's eyes. Just
That's part of the
blackness.
thing I love so much about Eggers' work, though, is because like every single time I see one of his new movies, I'm like, well, that wasn't what I was expecting.
Fair.
And that's really fun, especially like after 4 movies and being such a huge fan of his work, to still go into it and be like, what the fuck? I love that kind of thing. Like like Lighthouse, I didn't like the first time I saw it. Northman, I was like, okay, cool. But these movies just get better and better and better. But part of the reason they're so strange the first time you watch them is because he does such fucking weird things. Because often he's dealing with folklore that has shifted in media in ways that like make these sources like unrecognizable. Like this is probably the most like authentic vampire depiction that we've ever had in terms of like the traditional folklore, as just a dead, rotting corpse, really gross. Like this is way closer than most other things I can think of. A lot, you know, you get movies that have taken a lot of creative liberties and have done some amazing things, but in terms of like authenticity, this is fucking right there. And he talked about how much like unlearning had to happen while he was researching the folklore, because he's like, there's so many things that I associate with vampires that are just not part of the history of them. They've come because of media.
I don't know, bro.
That's a good
Lost
point
Boys
about-
is pretty authentic. So
That's right. That's a good point about the unexpectedness of Eggers' movies, because Tarantino is like that for me too, where I see his movies and I'm like, okay, and then I grow to love them so much with time.
yeah, and I think that's just a true mark of somebody who's like, even if you're not won over 100%, when you first watch something, the fact that you're willing to come back and spend more time with it and you want to, I really think that that's something that a lot of filmmakers, you know, you can watch their stuff and it's pretty disposable. It's like, okay, I've seen it, it's good, I like it, that's it. But you're not like pining for it, where it's like I could see myself in a few months being like, man, I really want to watch Nosferatu again and take in some more of this. It's like, especially when I think we're all pretty creative. I like to think so. So it's like, you know, everybody here has kind of this need and interest in, you know, wanting to either write or, you know, produce some kind of film, video game story of some kind. So it's like, I feel like films like this are almost like really great homework or really great like nutrition for your brain when it comes to that side of you, where it's like, I go back and I look at just the detail and what was taken into it. And I mean, Jake, we obviously know you've got a film coming out earlier this year. So
very similar to Nosferatu, actually.
Very similar to Nosferatu.
Same thing. Same.
Yeah.
It's Nosferatu with the chicken mask. It's gonna be. It's same thing. Yeah.
Do you? I guess where I'm headed with this is just like, how would you say, comparing this to Eggers' other work and maybe just like going off of what Evan just compared there, other vampire stories, where do you think Nosferatu lies for you?
I totally agree with Evan. It's one of the most authentic takes that we've ever seen on just the vampire story in general. And that's what I think is going to make this one stand out for not just Robert Eggers fans, but just like people who like this story. I think that's the big thing about it that makes it something special, because if you go back to something like, you know, like Bram Stoker's Dracula, for instance, it's a lot more romantic and artsy, and I love it for that reason. Again, it's kind of the same story, but it's still its own thing. This movie, you can come to it and you still get a different flavor, even though again it is kind of just going through the motions a little bit with the storyline, which I don't, you know, Daniel, I'm right there with you, man. I don't have a problem with that, because I do really like this story a bunch. And again, I think when you're telling a story as old as this one, what, you know, do you have the option of, do you change it? You know, do you mess with perfection, or do you just throw your own tone at it? And Eggers obviously chose the latter there, which I think is absolutely the right response. That's the right way to tell this story nowadays, at least for me. That's what I want to see. I like that it's the same story again, just with Eggers' own very unique touch onto it, which adds so much. I have like 3 movies already on my shelf that tell the same story, but I'm still going to be buying this one on 4K for that reason.
Good. Definitely agree. And Daniel, same question to you. Where does this sit for you as far as just like vampire stories, and just like as somebody who really dives deep into a lot of these vampire films and just these kind of old gothic horror stories? Where does this sit for you?
Yeah, it's tough for me because like vampires is my favorite horror subgenre. So a lot of vampire movies are among my favorite films of all time. So it's difficult for me to put this over a lot of my favorite movies of all time at this point. Like, do I like it more than the first Hammer Dracula film? Do I like it more than Coppola's Dracula or Fright Night? I don't think I can say that at this point, but I've only seen it once. I probably won't see it again until it comes to 4K. But I was sitting in the theater thinking this is going to look so good on 4K, because the reality is my 4K on my TV at home does look better than the theater screen. So that's kind of how it is at this point. So I'm really excited to watch it at home. So like I think it's the vampire movie of the 2000s. I think of all the 2000s, it is the best for sure. But that's also like my least favorite time period for vampire films, to be honest with you. I might put it in my top 10 vampire films of all time. Got to think about it more. As far as Eggers' work, I think at this point it's my second favorite. The Witch is the most terrified I've ever been in a movie theater in my life. So The Witch was so impactful for me. It's hard for me to put it over that. But I do like it better than The Northman or The Lighthouse at this point.
Fair. Yeah, and Evan, I know you kind of spurred this whole thing off, but as far as just like when it comes to maybe for you, this story being told again, like if we were to ever go back and do Nosferatu again, do you think there's any room left for interpretation, or do you think that this is definitive?
Oh yeah. I think there's totally more. I mean, the movie that I have in my head for it, like I'm like that still doesn't exist. So that there's definitely other takes of it that can happen.
It's time for Evan's Nosferatu.
I was about to say, yeah, that's what he's queuing up for us. So.
Hey, no, yeah, that'd be insane.
You have to cast an actual vampire for that one, though.
That would be the plan, yeah.
Just
Jake?
do Shadow of the Vampire again.
See if Max Shrek is still around. You can take the stake out of his chest.
Yeah, that's true.
You can shave my head, make my ears all pointy.
Great.
I'll do it.
Yeah, no. So I mean, in terms of Eggers movies, The Lighthouse is still my favorite. I didn't expect that this was going to dethrone The Lighthouse. That is such a unique movie that I was like, I don't think there's any way to do a regular story that could like compare to that. It just doesn't work. But like it's always like The Lighthouse is on top and then the rest move around. And this is kind of like just thrown right into the pool with The Witch and The Northman at the moment. Where like recently The Northman has been above The Witch for me. I fucking love The Northman. But it really depends. I was just rewatching the scene from The Witch where William is like broken and is praying to God the night before everything dies. And I was like, man, this movie's still a fucking masterpiece. Like all of his movies I love so much. So it's right up there. It's as good as the rest of his work for me. In terms of vampire movies, I was thinking about this because I was chatting about it with my cousin. I do like it more than the Coppola one. That I know. I definitely like it more than the old Hammer ones, even though I love those movies. So then for me, it comes down to, do I like it more than the original Nosferatu and the Herzog version? Because those are my two favorite vampire movies. I don't know if I like it more, but it's definitely, it's a similar thing with like Eggers' body of work, where I'm like, it's just thrown into the pool with these other movies that I love now, where like these three Nosferatu movies are definitely my favorite takes on the vampire story. And they're so different that I don't feel like I can really say if I like one more than the other. Like it's so fascinating to me, and this is why I get kind of frustrated when people are like, oh, this is just the same story again. I'm like, yeah, but if you look at the Herzog version and you look at the Eggers version, you can't tell me those are the same movie.
Yeah.
There's no argument to be made there. They're so wildly different. And to have both of those coexisting, they're so different. So I'm like, it's exciting to me to have those coexist, and this is just thrown right into the bunch. It may be my favorite, but it also just came out. So this is like excitement, and I'm like, yeah, this is fun and exciting and new and fresh. So give it some time, but I adore this movie. I think it's phenomenal.
I think of all past vampire movies, this one is the most similar to Coppola's Dracula. I think that's the closest comparison.
Yeah.
It still feels epic. You know, that's one thing that like I was going to say is like, when we've seen this growth from Eggers, because I was going to say The Lighthouse is still my favorite. I love the contained like nature of that movie, and I think it's like,
he's so good at chamber pieces.
Something that's just really, really sticks with me, and something that inspires me a lot. Plus I think that nautical horror, like in any facet, just somehow just gets under my skin a lot. So it's like, you know, that's something that I really like. And it's still, for me though, I would have to say, I was talking to Evan on the phone the other day about this after he saw it, and I was saying that I think Nosferatu, I think it just goes over The Northman for me. But again, it's just kind of like, and that would put it, obviously it'd go Lighthouse, Witch, Nosferatu, Northman, but it's kind of like any other day of the week. Maybe I'm feeling Northman more. Maybe
The
I'm
worst
feeling
Eggers
that,
movie is still amazing.
Yeah, that is
Like-
true.
Yeah,
And
there is
that's
no
a good
worst.
thing to
There's
have.
least best.
That's
The least
that's
best,
it
yeah.
exactly. It's like it can be your least favorite Eggers movie, but it's still a fucking Robert Eggers movie, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And that's a hell of a feat. Now, I just want to mention this, and then we'll wrap up here real quick. Just we don't have to go too deep into it, but starting with Jake. So we've got and Evan, you can correct me if I'm wrong here. On the table for Eggers' next film, we have apparently a Labyrinth remake, The Night, and supposedly he mentioned a Western of some sort. Which one do you want to see first?
there is another one we should add in there.
Okay, which one is that?
Another movie that he's been working on is a 4-hour long Rasputin.
Oh, that's
Oh
true.
my
I saw
God.
that one. Yeah.
That's it. That's
and
what I want.
what's the guy's name who played Floki in Vikings? Which
Oh, he's
Skarsgård
in-
is that?
Is it a
Because he should
Skarsgård?
play him. It is a Skarsgård.
I'll
What the hell
find
is his
it.
name? Because he should
Is it
play it.
Northman Skarsgård?
No.
It's one of the
Um,
other brothers. Oh, it's starts with a G.
There's so many of them.
Gustav. Gustav Skarsgård. He should play
Nice.
Rasputin if they do this.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, let's proceed.
Just put another Skarsgård brother in the mix. Let's go. Collect them all like the Infinity Stones, Robert.
I love them all. I think The Night's probably my favorite from what I know about it. It is an original story from him. And I think after Nosferatu, that's what I'm looking for the most. We don't need a Labyrinth remake. I don't know. Maybe that's a hot take, but I'm good on that.
I'm with you.
I think Robert Eggers. I don't know. To me, I loved the Lighthouse the most. I think I'm again with Evan on that one. That's my favorite. Nosferatu is definitely number 2, though. I think at this
Wow,
point,
all
I
three
do-
of you are Lighthouse at the top. Interesting.
I love the Lighthouse.
I'm
It goes
wearing
so
I've
a
hard.
considered
t-shirt
getting a
for it right
tattoo
now,
of it.
so,
Like it's
Do
The
it.
Witch is the scariest, though, Daniel. I will say that.
Yeah.
Like that,
I agree.
100% there with you on that one. But yeah, The Knight's my favorite. I just want to see an original story from him. I feel like his last 2 were kind of, and this isn't a complaint, but there's stories I've already seen before. I'm ready for something, I guess, even more fresh from the guy.
yeah.
And then Daniel, your pick.
The first time hearing about all of these is from you. I haven't looked into it at all, but ever since I was a kid, I've been obsessed with like knights and Robin Hood and King Arthur. So I'm tempted to go towards the knight. But Rasputin would be so great because he would get so deep into the actual occult practices Rasputin did, and a lot of that stuff is really interesting. And Hammer made a great Rasputin movie starring Christopher Lee as Rasputin. So shout that out. So I think from a historical perspective, I think I'd put Rasputin at the top as far as interest in the occult, but Knight would be super close.
Nice. And Evan, where are you sitting?
For me, like the Labyrinth thing, it should be clarified, is the only one that he hasn't talked about. So like we don't actually know if that's real. The Labyrinth is a rumor at this point. The rest are movies that he's been like, yeah, these are movies that I have on my mind. Labyrinth, I'm like, that could be cool, like a dark fantasy kind of thing. I can see what he would do with that material.
It would probably
Not-
be great.
It would probably be pretty cool.
We were
I'm
debating
down.
about that a little bit in our group chat.
Yeah, because I
agree
think he
with
would
you.
do really. I think he would do really well with that
He's-
material.
He's
He
got
would.
such a nice eye for humor.
He does.
Throughout even how dark some of these films get. Even Nosferatu has a few sequences where it's
Totally.
a little funny.
Willem
so it's
Dafoe's
like-
hilarious.
Oh
Dafoe,
yeah.
yeah.
I think that he would probably do really well tackling something that's a little bit more, like kid friendly. I'd love to see that.
Sure, he has expressed interest in doing a movie that was made more for a younger audience, so that would totally track. But in terms of
kids
like,
would hate it.
yeah, I mean,
Right.
we'll see.
We would love it.
We would totally love it. The Night really excites me because like that reminds me, of course, of the Northman. I love that sort of like, that style. He really nails. I picture The Green Knight, which is a movie that I fucking adore. So I can see that being sort of similar to that. I think the one where I'm the most like, oh, is a Western. And the reason that I think that for me is the one where I'm the most curious about it is because it is so outside of the wheelhouse of what he's done before. Like The Night, I really want him to do The Night. And it's probably like the one that I was the most excited about since I heard about it. But then I'm like, I want to see him do something like totally different right now. Rasputin will be amazing because of all the occult things, but I think the one I'm most curious about is the Western because I'm like,
I do love westerns.
What would he do?
Super authentic.
That's the thing. Like, I love Westerns, and I'm like, think about if he did like a sort of horror western where you're in like dark, like broad landscapes in the desert night. You could deal with like the folklore of that kind of region. I'm like, that could be pretty cool. Like Skinwalker, Eggers. Think about
Or
that.
if he focused it on Native Americans and their
Yeah, well,
beliefs,
that's what I'm saying. Like
really
he's kind of like toyed with that a little bit throughout his whole career. So I would love to see him really dive into it. So I think that could be really interesting.
Yeah, I just hope he does a Predator movie eventually.
Mm.
So there we go. No, I'm
Yeah.
kidding. Put a Western Predator movie with him.
When's he gonna make a Marvel movie, man? Come on.
Yeah, when's he gonna make a Marvel movie? Give him
you
Doctor
imagine?
Strange.
Captain
3.
Marvel 3.
Yeah.
No, but I think they're all good picks. If you guys know me at all, I'm probably gonna go towards the Western just because I'm a big Bone Tomahawk fan. I would love it
Yeah.
if it was horror or not horror. Westerns just have a very special place in my heart in general.
That's great.
It's just something that like I'm ready for it. But yeah, that's pretty much I think everything we got, boys. That's our talk for Nosferatu. Definitely enjoyed this. It's nice to get to finally talk about this movie a little bit more and actually get into it, because like it's just kind of been trying not to talk to Evan very much the last couple weeks, just because I don't want there to be any inkling of how I thought. But yeah, this has been good. So we'll just kind of do the round thing, let everybody know who you are, where you're from, and where they can find you next, starting with our boy, of course, Jake below me.
I'm Killjoy Jake. Go subscribe and check out Chicken Man on January 10th.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Daniel, take it away, my friend.
Yeah, I'm Daniel with the Cobwebs channel. Talk about horror movies, mostly older horror movies, and I just posted my top 20 older films I watched for the first time over the last year, and I'll be posting my 2024 horror movies ranking very soon.
And take it away there, Mr. Nosferatu himself.
Yeah.
The Count.
Yes, I am Evan from Rockland Graves. I just put up my spoiler-free review of Nosferatus, but I mean, I'm shared a lot of my thoughts here, but I talk a little bit more about Ellen in that video. So if you want to hear some of my thoughts on Ellen, go check that out. I will be doing
I'm
a
sad it
very...
got canceled.
Yeah, right. I will be doing a very long, in-depth video on it down the line. But as in terms of what's coming up, I've got my top 10 horror movies of the year list that I'm working on right now. And then please, when this video drops, please watch it because it's taking me way too long. My Terrifier 3 deep dive is coming out. It was supposed to be out Christmas Day, and then it ballooned up to over an hour long. So I had a lot to say apparently about Terrifier 3, so that will be dropping within the next little while. And then the Northman, actually. So it's Terrifier 3 and then the Northman are my next two that I'm dropping.
There you go. Alrighty, guys. Well, yeah, you know what's going on over here on Splattercast. We're just making more disturbing movies lists. You guys are making me watch a bunch of gross stuff, movies that I don't like, and it's been great. I love it. I'm doing it all for the attention, but it is what it is. So now we got a lot of fun stuff. After you're seeing this, I should have just posted my gothic horror movie list, so that's coming out tonight as when we're recording this. And yeah, I got a lot of fun things on the horizon. We also have our top 10 of the year coming out this week. New Year's at midnight. So that's what we do on here. And yeah, that's going to wrap it up for me. So until next time, everybody, that's going to wrap it up here. And yeah, stay scared.
Do the horse shit, gonna do it live. Cause Splattercast kick it every day they live.